Hi there, and thanks again for all of your wonderful words of support for the premiere of Music by 300 Strangers this weekend, which is linked above if you haven't seen it already. I'm just going to do 2 more videos about it based on the questions that have been raised in the comments. Please keep them coming. One I'm recording later on with Jake Jackson, who's going to give us a full mix rundown. I hope you agree that his achievement on that was nothing short of pure art, really. It's not just that he was working with 381 audio sources, he was also working with 381 locations, different mics, different ambiances, all of that kind of stuff. And to give it the cohesion he gave, I think will be fascinating to find out how he did that. So subscribe and ding that bell if you want to be notified when we put that video up. The other video I was going to do is just based again on something that a lot of people requested, which is how I went about editing the video. Being a self-taught video editor, it was well beyond my pay grades. And I think it might be interesting for some of the proper pro video editors to watch how basically a muso takes audio editing techniques and practices and applies them to video editing. I think the one saving grace with this, if we just move over to my edit workstation, is that the primary goal was the audio. So everyone who contributed did 2 things: recorded some great sounding audio, but also recorded it with a sync plop. So we had the advantage of things being easy to synchronize. And if the audio is synchronized, the visuals will be synchronized. And that's not always the case for video editors editing music materials, whether it be a string quartet playing in the background. The concept of synchronization is not lost on filmmakers, but the concept of synchronization and musical synchronization are often, if the preparation isn't carried out, are often stuff that are lost. And certainly the number of times I've worked on production where you can get things synchronized, but you're editing between performances and the performances aren't synchronized and all that kind of stuff can be hellish. So I think for a lot of video editors out there, looking at that looked a bit scary, but we started from this single united point of synchronization. So this is my session. Basically there's lots of different sequences. So the full film looks like that. And you're probably surprised there's actually not that many clips considering the amount of footage that was in there. And that's because I just basically employed an old audio technique of bouncing down, but visually. So we recorded this a couple of weeks ago, the SSO, Scottish Session Orchestra. Jake gave me a bunch of strings mixes. So they did a couple of takes of a performance all the way through, and then they recorded these sections A through to K separately. So we had clean heads and clean tails. The fantastic videographer from Clockwork gave me this just very long video, which is basically footage from the session. So we've got some rehearsal footage there, and it looks like he's got that on some kind of slider. And then basically you can see here's all the different takes of the vignettes. What was great is he did a different shot for each take. So all I had to do then was line those up with Jake's full mixes of the strings and cut between them. Because they're strings and not drums, it's not like, you can't really see if they're like mega tight or indeed if it's the same performance. And you know, what I'm referencing is the left hands. The bowing isn't always as you'd expect it. There's a few gaps where the SSO aren't playing, but this gave me a great starting point that whenever I kind of faded out of YouTube footage, I had this fantastic footage of the SSO. So basically what I did is I just then bounced that down. I didn't worry about the audio because obviously the audio is going to be in the mix, but just basically bounced the imagery down so that could just sit in the timeline just as a constant thing that we can flick back to. That's since been all kind of chopped up, but it was at first edited with it just as a constant in the timeline. The next thing I decided to do was to create mosaics, which again I was going to use that bounce down technique. So it created this little template, and basically it's 12 of the YouTube films. So if you have a look at the after show video, you'll see that basically I created these vignettes with maybe up to 25, 30 players. So then what I did when organizing those mosaics is go back to the original sequence and simply see who was playing. Okay, so this is the synth vignette, and we can see that, say for example, this region is present in the synth vignette is 322, 322. So we literally check through all of these on our curation document, 322 there, and we can see that there's a tick for player, and that means there is actually some footage of the player playing, and that's what I prioritise for the videos, particularly for the mosaic. So let's go back to the edit workstation, and you can see we've got 322 here, and very visible where the sync plop is. Copy the attributes from there and paste them there. Motion. And suddenly that's going to be down there, and repeated that for the whole process. So let's just take that, and there we have a mosaic. And then basically I went in and resized all of the videos, so that probably is a 720p, not a 1080, so I have to resize that differently. And if we go back to, you'll see that we have the mosaics here, so ambient, bass, esoteric guitars, piano mosaic 1, piano mosaic 2. And what's kind of fun about it is if we just pull in piano mosaic 1, wherever we cut into that footage, it'll be in time, provided it's synchronized here with the beginning of the audio here. All synchronized in, all the way. So the next step was really to establish the different vignettes, their different moments, and so that gave me a really easy plot for the edit of going between the orchestra, between the vignettes. So for example here we've got the bass vignette, into the esoteric vignette, drums, synths, etc., etc. Now the featured musicians, I just basically gathered again from the DAW, looked at who was kind of featured, for example, Keith's melody, John Mayer, Heather on the saxophone, this gentleman on the trombone, and there's a guy on didgeridoo. Just really wanted to see those, and we organised those into features. And again, simply a matter of putting them in, grabbing the sync plop, taking it to the beginning of the sequence and then chopping out the bit that I wanted. Helen really helped me find what were referred to as pretty, and that's not pretty faces, it was just stuff that was really good looking. For example, Oliver in an empty swimming pool there I thought was a great image. So we dotted those all about. And then the final part was to create this kind of mega mosaic. So again, just grabbed all of these mosaics, which were already bounced down, so already synchronized, simply organize those like that. One little problem I had at the end of the track was some people had already gone to the pub. So for example, so we had 2 black squares with people who had already finished their performance by that point. So I had to grab just a couple of bits and patch those in there. What I did like, and I love it when these things happen, and it was a total mistake, was as they stopped the videos at totally different times. So we had this natural fade out, which, let's just get rid of my dirty fingers, which was really just lovely, the way that those just faded out naturally. It's not something that I had to do. And there is Heather at the end and our gentleman on the didgeridoo. I knew that that was going to be the most difficult. I limited myself to a day to make that performance video, as I referred to it. And then I worked on the preamble, which a couple of people said, oh, just get on with it. Probably have to agree with you. It was two setups. It was one over here, the normal standard setup, and then one behind this camera here. And I always have two cameras. So if we have a look at this cut here, and music. So I thought for this year's, what the actual original take was this. Love of sound and music. Get in the next line. So I thought, and music. So I thought for this year's piano day. So that's why I use a B-cam, is I can only maintain maybe 2 sentences at a time. One of the last things I also worked on was shots of the screen, which I did on a macro lens of my iMac Pro. And this was for this complicated section where I took lots of shards of people's music and chopped them up. So this is what this looked like. What I was disappointed about was just the sheer amount of dust on my screen there. So it was a great relief to me when Robbie Crawford, who is going to be my new video assistant stroke editor up here in Edinburgh, he was able to do his first piece of work for me, which was this staggering montage of faces. Which I think was a real highlight of the film. Where the underscore's concerned, all I did is I put together the different stacks, and I used basically a combination of the synth stack and the ambient stack. And you can see the automation I've had against the dialogue there. And that's basically it. The design department provided me with the credit roller and the cards, both for the top and the bottom. And most of it is down to the fantastic footage that was provided by the Strangers, which I have to thank you for again. Particularly, I really enjoyed, Heather, your moment with the clapperboard at the beginning here.
May have had a few minor technical issues.
My preamble was a bit heartfelt and serious, and it was a great precursor for the light-hearted and somewhat whimsical nature that a lot of people approached, and I welcome that. That's definitely the hardest video edit I've ever done, and I would love to hear from video editors about all of the stuff that I'm doing wrong, and am I breaking all sorts of laws by basically bouncing down videos that are like complicated and chopped up with all of the different like scaling and all of that stuff in order to re-import and then retile and then rebounce down? Is that kind of illegal and stuff? I think that a lot of video editors get a real kind of crappy end of the stick where synchronizing music and picture's concerned, because in productions, you know, I mean, sound always comes second anyway, but if something is being performed, taking those measures of making sure a sync plop is present, that everything's recorded at the same tempo, all of that kind of stuff, to click, all of that kind of stuff, often, and you'd be surprised, very rarely happens. So these things often, music and picture, are a total car crash. But again, because it was all about the music and the picture was second, we had the luxury of everything being very easy to synchronize. So again, do tune in this week for the mix rundown by Jake Jackson and myself. And if you have any questions for us, please put them in the comments down below. I hope this departure into the world of video editing is kind of a welcome breath of fresh air. And as I mentioned before, we'll move on from MB300S after this next film. I've got some really exciting stuff coming up, so do subscribe, ding that bell for notifications, and one of those for all of the amazing contributors, the Strangers, for not only their music but their brilliant video content. There will be more news about this. This is not the end of this, but we'll probably move on for a week or so before returning back to it. Also, in the video with Jake Jackson, I'll be announcing the people who I'll be giving some very special gifts to for just going that extra mile for us. Thanks as always for watching, and see you next time.